Hello. Thanks for watching another Pisces Palmer Sunday case study. This week we're looking at the ex-Prime Minister of Pakistan, three times elected, and I don't know if I'm saying his name right, Mohammed Nawaz Sharif. Now, I was asked by someone emailed me yesterday asking me to read his hands. Now, I know very little about this person, only that they have been elected three times, and there have been some allegations around sort of corruption. He's the longest standing Prime Minister of Pakistan as well, I know that much, and I know his age. Other than that, everything I disclose in this video is entirely from what I can read in his hands. So for that person who emailed me, this one is for you. And if you would like me to read the hands of a celebrity for next Sunday, please do feel free to email me or comment on this video below. So in this video, I'm going to uncover what sort of a person Nawaz is and what we can see in his hands. Now, I've got three pretty good images here, this one easily being the best one. And I was able to determine more than I thought I would, which is often the case with these Sunday case studies, but there's never really all that much accuracy in terms of timing events. And that's just because I can only really provide clarity with clarity. Now, the overall hand shape here is, for me, this hand type is unmistakably a sensual hand type. Now, if you want to know more of what I mean by that hand type, it's a very specific hand type of part of an unknown methodology of hand type classification, and you can check that out on my website, and I will go into it into greater detail there. But to summarize, the sensual hand is a hedonist and really lives for the pleasures of life. And and what we can really gain from the here and now, and that's noted by the rounded um, shape of the fingertips. That always shows someone who has an ability to respond in the moment, but also a need to respond to the desires in the moment as well. Now, all the basal phalanges are wide. The palm has a kind of soft and flabby appearance. The uh, Mount of Venus is, I would say, overdeveloped, and it's very sort of low hanging. The thumb as well, with sensual hands, the thumb tip always generally bends backwards as well. Now, sensual hands often work in the entertainment industry, and this is because, as I say, they live for pleasure, so they understand it, and in that they understand that human condition, that need to satisfy desire in life, and so they play to that strength. Lou Lou Pearlman and Harvey Weinstein were both sensual hands, and they both ended up working in the entertainment industry with great success. They are often the life and soul of the party. They have superb personalities. They are often quite inspiring and great conversationalists, and they know just what to say and when in order to motivate others and inspire change. And this low hanging mount of Venus that we see here, it's stronger and heavier lower down towards the palm, the base of the palm. Now, the base of the palm really represents the body, and that again kind of enhances and points towards that need for satisfying physical desire. It shows the physical desire is strong within. Now, also notice that the base of the hand is wider than the top, only just. But this shows a need to um, create change. It shows someone who is a bit of a pioneer, and they thrive off the challenge of creating something new and making change, making a difference. Now, the amount of desire that we see in this Venus mount would be worrying to some degree if the thumb was not keeping it in line. And actually, what we see with the thumb here is it's very well developed. It's very long and it's strong. It's got a good width about it, but it's also got a good length about it. And it's not as though, logic is wasted. We don't see an overly heavy tip. We see a good balance between the length of both logic and willpower. So this person is governed. They are neither pushy nor a pushover, and they are governed by a sense of sort of balance within, and they have a good handle on their own temper as well. So there's actually the right degree, a good degree of balance here, which moderates their own um, feelings of needs and desires. The strength and the length of the thumb is certainly one of the signs of an achiever because it's showing that the personality is strong, but both their ideas and their ability to action them are strong. And so when you have balance between the two, it shows it's an indication of someone who is an achiever. They are going to achieve great things. Now, the flexibility of the thumb's tip, you can see it more clearly here. This is one of a few things. I would say, firstly, it shows that someone has they work in bursts and they become very sort of tired after that and they need to sort of catnap. They are excellent at excelling in short amounts, short period of time, but also the flexibility of the will here. And that's what this is showing, that that flexed will shows an adaptability of determination, a fluidity of their own will. So essentially, their will is adaptable and they can be persuaded, they can be themselves manipulated. No one person is incorruptible. So once a person, I suppose, understands this person's currency and what drives them, then they could manipulate them potentially. That's not to say that this person is um, corrupted or easily manipulated. It's just that someone with a certain sort of angle, if someone had some dirt on them, then they would bend. If someone had spoke in their currency, then they would bend. If someone managed to find out what they desired most and bargain with them, then there is that potential there for going back on potentially their word. Now, this is something I find really interesting because the Jupiter finger, the tip of it leans towards the thumb, and I've already spoken a little bit about the thumb. And you can see it in all of the images here, it leans towards the thumb. And what this really shows is this aspect of Jupiter is ego, ambition, and spirituality, religious thinking, that kind of outward sort of cosmos. The higher meanings are in some way, all of these aspects of his Jupiterian qualities are in some way related to and connected to his own overall personality and willpower, his desire to change and make great change. It's almost as if his character is so strong, his personality is so strong that his his determination and drive and his willpower and his ideas are kind of driving and pulling his ambition and ego and even um, potentially sort of religious thinking. And this as an unconscious sort of gesture, the wilting, the leaning towards Jupiter, leaning towards a very powerful thumb, is certainly an indication of a need, a desire to influence and change the world around him. Again, this is someone who wants to make great change. We see that width in the base of the hand as well. Sensual hands are very capable of making change by rousing those around them with their personalities, with their character, by inspiring and motivating others around them through impassioned speeches and just through humor and really identifying with core values and through the understanding of what drives others, through the understanding of their themselves and what drives them, desire, they often manage to influence others, and this is why they so often work in fields of entertainment. Now, whilst sensual hands have this superb, often, ability to inspire and influence change in others, in those around them, they don't have that same ability to influence and inspire change within themselves. And so they often find it very difficult to change their own habits, their own unhealthy, potentially, ways, and very often consume themselves into an early grave. Now, of all the fingers, Apollo appears most well developed at the basal phalanx. as well as the tip of Apollo. And what this really shows us is there's a strong sense of discrimination towards others in terms of not just how people go about things, but even their dress sense as well. There's a certain strong sense of taste about this person. And I think quite literally, this person has a good sense of taste themselves, as well as artistically, as well as in terms of appreciative aesthetics and beauty, natural beauty. And I think this person probably is something of a nature lover because again, we see a well-developed tip of Apollo. All the fingertips are fairly well developed, but in particular, Apollo. So, these two in conjunction, I think this person has quite strong values in terms of how things should look and how the environment should be and look, and how people should behave in that environment as well. Now, in conjunction with what we see here on the Apollo finger, I just want to point out that the headline as well, it's not a dramatically creative curve. It gently curves, and this shows us possibly creative inclination, possibly even artistic skills here. I don't know how much of these have been actualized, but there is perhaps something a little bit dormant there in terms of creative abilities. The Mercury finger is the finger of communication and expression, and if we were to see any signs of corruption, we would see it here. And actually, what I see here is something that's very upright, well developed, strong, and healthy, aligned. And if anything, we don't see curvature towards Apollo. We don't see an over appreciation of aesthetics and physical beauty. We don't see the potential here for overtly kind of giving way to sexual desires. In fact, in terms of desire, this person probably puts food up above sex on the priority list in terms of desire. But the little finger does lean away from the rest of the fingers, ever so slightly. You can see it in this image here. And so what this really shows us is this person has a need to do things in their own way. They're very independent. And the strength of the finger, it's a good width. It's not too strong. He's not too opinionated. He's not too um, powerful and dominating with his expression. But the tip of the Mercury finger is ever so slightly more, it's pointed ever so slightly more than the rest of the fingers. The rest of the fingers are conic, whereas Mercury is a little bit sort of sharper. And that gives us someone who is cunning and shrewd and quick of mind, as well as wit and verbally as well. They're able to quick fire with retort. Notice the length of the tip of Mercury is longer than the other two phalanges. And this again shows us that his verbal capabilities are at his strongest in terms of all of his mercurial traits. Now, what we see here in the Mercury finger, in conjunction with the headline stops underneath Apollo. This, and it's relatively straight. As I say, there is a gentle curve, but it shows propensity towards business and acquiring materially. It shows us this is what this person's desire is really. It's more about sort of money and freedom as well, with that kind of Mercury finger leaning slightly away from the rest of the fingers. This person really values privacy and space, freedom, and money provides that freedom. Now, while we're on the topic of Mercury, this is a really fascinating feature of his palm. We're going to dig now more into the chirology, the lines in the palms. Now we've kind of really investigated what the hand shape and fingers have shown us. And what we see here is a Mercury line rising from the lifeline, rising right up onto Mercury. And it's sort of offshooting away from the lifeline. And really what this is a success in business line, if you like, sometimes referred to as a business line. And most of the time you'll see these shooting away from the lifeline over here towards the Mercury mount, and it's an advancement in academia, in business. And for this to be a business line, really it has to um, be clear, it has to be straight, and it has to offshoot from the lifeline, and it has to rise up onto the Mercury mount. Now, it's very commonly mistaken for a health line. It is always seen in the hands of people who are exceptionally gifted in terms of industry or science. Mir Bashir, the legendary palmist who taught my mentor, said that a line of success like this that creates a triangle formation with the fate line, the headline, and this line of success shooting away from the lifeline, rising up onto the Mercury Mount, is a sign of someone with an aptitude for learning the occult sciences and has a keen instinct, a keen ability of potentially mediumship if they develop these skills, but certainly um, some clairvoyant abilities. Now, if you look very closely, I can appreciate it's a little bit blurry, but there is something of a little line just down here that follows and joins on to this line of success in business. And really what this is showing us is that this person is highly instinctive, has superb um, intuition in business, and this has led towards their success. Now, looking at the heart line, I find it interesting because when I look for, because I've read only a very small amount about this person, I've read about the allegations of corruption against this person. So I'm kind of looking for that in this hand, for or against. And in terms of the heartline can tell us whether or not someone is highly, um, corrupted or disingenuous, deceitful. If there is a distinctive waving of the heartline underneath the Saturn finger, and I don't see that here. In this image here, I see a slight um, waving of the extremity of the heart line from one end to the other. It dips downwards into or onto the amount of Jupiter, showing potentially idealistic um, thinking and feeling. And it kind of, rises. It starts high and it kind of evens out, and then it kind of slowly rises again, and then evens out again, and looks to kind of level out again. So overall, we're not seeing, I would not classify this as a wavy heart line, but the waving at the extremities of the heart line shows potential blood ailment or cardiac issues. However, I don't see waving underneath the Saturn finger. I don't see this person being deceitful or exploitive, or trying to, lend money and demand, extortionate amounts back, because that is what that would show us here. And I believe we saw that in more in the hands of sort of Bill Gates. I can't quite remember now, but I don't see that sign here. It's a fairly low lying heart line, which means there is something of a, um, you know, he's going to fall for the sob story at times. However, I think this is certainly someone who overall has a fairly strong ability to separate emotion from decision making. And whilst his heartline does travel over just about onto the Jupiter Mount, the headline and the heartline, I wouldn't say they're narrow, but they're not broadly spaced apart. I think at times this person can be a little bit selfish. But overall, this is someone who cares about the bigger picture and cares about what can be done to benefit most. And that is because of all of the signs combined here. The low set thumb is a sign of a humanitarian. The heart line reaching over onto the Jupiter Mount itself is a sign of a philanthropist. So we have here somewhat sort of contradictory nature. I think he is generous in the overall, in the grand scheme, but I think there can be times of selfishness. But what I find really interesting is that the heartline rises over onto the Jupiter mountain, and as it does, we see an ambition line, and it connects towards this ambition line, and this ambition line rises upwards to um, fulfill and to sort of activate this ambition. And this occurs at the age of, I would say, about 22. There were ambitions here for this person, very practically now, because we're looking at the right hand only in this reading, that were, this person rose to a newer height and really claimed their independence at about the age of 22. And that is where the lifeline breaks away from the headline at this time as well. So this was a really big year for this person. Now, the fate line is a really interesting one in this person's hand because it appears to kind of cut the palm into two, as though the palm itself is a book and there are two pages to this book. And I find it interesting because, firstly, the way in which the fate line develops, it develops as it sort of joins onto the lifeline and wraps around from underneath. It emerges out from underneath Venus. And this is always a sign of someone who has, in some way, had their destiny decided for them by their parents. But also the way in which the fate line cuts the palm in two shows how this person feels very practically in a very sort of environmental and physical way. This person has no control over their own fate. Now, notice that in late 40s, on the fate line here, late 40s, I would say perhaps even maybe age 50, there is an obstacle here, a strong obstacle barring this person's path. This person really came up against it, against the odds at this age. Now, on the lifeline, at the age of maybe it's 25, I can actually see a bit of a square here. Um, Maybe not 25, but early to mid-20s. There's a bit of a square here, so I wonder if there was a stay in hospital. But I find it interesting that at, up to late 40s, again, perhaps potentially age 50, there is something of a Mars line developing here. So there's a need to persevere and fight at this time. There is assistance from the god of war here. Perhaps most intriguing of all is that the lifeline at the age of late 60s, it veers off course and connects with the fate line to continue on its journey around and underneath the base of Venus. This person will live and die in their certainly die in their native homeland. And it's in his late 60s that he resigned as Prime Minister for Pakistan for the final time. And if you notice here, look, you've got here a travel line from Luna, low down on Luna, almost it's sort of Pluto here, and it's looking to affect this person. So there's an outside influence here. There's travel at this time. It's outside of their control. It's a very sort of almost cosmic interruption, disturbance in their life that affects them. And I would think that this was probably a karmic year for them. And I think the next karmic year for them is 78. How old is he now? I think he's 75 now. So in 3 years' time, I think he's going to come up against a few health issues. But notice at the same time, going back to this late 60s, real sort of change in his life here. Notice the Apollo line here, and again, I can appreciate it's kind of blurry, but this is the best image I've got. There is something of an island on the Apollo line here, on the Sun line. His success is dramatically or attacked, I suppose, by defamation. His character has been attacked and damaged, and so it might be this was one of the contributing factors towards resigning, and perhaps he felt like there was no control over the situation, the circumstance, and actually there was nothing better to do than resign. And you can see the fate line after this time. It's not nearly as strong. It's not as clear. It's not as there's not nearly as much satisfaction from his path in life after this time, which is a kind of a sad thing to see. So overall, I have to say I don't see signs of corruption. I do see signs of scandal, as this defamation is scandal, but I don't see as a person this being someone who is um, corrupted, corruptible certainly, but no one is incorruptible. I don't believe this person was acting um, in the interests of solely themselves. I don't see a deceitful or dishonest person here, and I don't see someone who was or is a cheat or a liar. I do hope you've enjoyed this palm reading. Please do let me know your thoughts. And again, if you'd like me to read the hands of anyone else next Sunday, drop a comment below. Thank you very much for watching and please subscribe and I shall see you on the next one.